Okay, well, welcome everyone to this final session, roundtable discussion on what's next, traditional safety approaches, sustainable safety approach and changes to make. So for those who don't know me, my name is Darren Williams and I'm from the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development and I'll be moderating this session. It is the final session, I believe, today, and unfortunately I've not been able to join all the sessions, although I was supposed to be speaking this today. But today we have 5 speakers, which I'll introduce them shortly. But just before I give the floor to the speakers to introduce themselves, just let you know we only have 45 minutes. That is a very short amount of time. We'll obviously allow the speakers to introduce themselves and obviously share information in regards to their theme. And then we'll open up to the audience for questions. So before I introduce the speakers, as I mentioned, I just want to share some thoughts on traditional and sustainable approaches to safety. Now, if we consider traditional approaches, we automatically think of preventative controls, policies, safety management training, all those classic safety arrangements. And there is little focus with regards to the cost of health and safety. And I just want to touch on that because it's something that people do tend to forget. There's 2.3 million workers die every year from injuries and disabilities and diseases, 313 million from non-fatal injuries. And something that I'm working on quite a lot myself with regards to road safety. They tend to talk a lot about the global domestic product and the impact of accidents that have. I'm looking into this health and safety, work-related health and safety, has a global impact of 4% on GDP lost because of work-related injuries. Now, I know obviously GDP is obviously something that's very fluctuating at the moment with the current pandemic or something. But I worked this out in 2019 that equates to about $3.5 trillion lost to work-related injuries. So if anyone ever turns around to us and says that safety doesn't pay, I think it's definitely worth sharing those figures with them. So what is sustainable safety approach? And more importantly, from our point of view, is achievable. We know basic health and safety measures are absent in many of the projects that even I visit. And how can we contribute and speed up the process to make sure that safety is more embedded within businesses? And how can we get the sustainable development goals to support us on this journey? So, as I mentioned before, I was unable to join the session yesterday, and I apologise for that. But I just wanted to share some information about how at EBRD we're trying to put safety within the core of sustainability. So we know generally there's 3 sort of main SDGs that are focusing on work-related safety, which is health and sustainable development goal 3, reducing deaths from hazardous chemicals. Jobs and obviously promoting good and safe, decent work, and the institutional focus in SDG 16 on effective accountability and transparent institutions at all levels. And I just want to touch on that one there on SDG 16 with regards to institutional, and that is really where EBRD comes in as a financing entity. So we have our environmental social policy requirements and the PR4, which sets out our expectations, what we expect businesses to put in place to ensure that we will obviously borrow money and finance projects. But we also understand and appreciate that there's a need to have a balance along with other business priorities. I mean, let's face it, without profit, without a business making a profit, there is no business at all. And no business, no safety, no PPE, no jobs. So it has a massive impact. But we know businesses can work with these competing priorities and they can exist in harmony, but there has to be a clear goal set and more importantly, accepted. So the goals that we obviously talk about, they need to have sufficient demands on businesses to ensure that they push. And this is something that I'm always very keen to stress on all the projects that we work on. There's always an opportunity to reach that higher bar. And each business, I know there's obviously some reluctance in some cases. These goals need to be set in such a way which are achievable and realistic. So when they reach this balance, and we know that these goals are practical, this is where EBRD comes in with regards to the tool of finance. I think you'd all agree the tool of finance is probably one of the best tools to influence anyone when it comes to safety. So I'm going to stop there anyway, and I'm going to let the next speakers introduce themselves, who bring a wealth of knowledge and experience. So first of all, Dr. Nancy Leviston, I'd like to introduce you. You've probably already spoke today, and you've probably introduced yourself to the audience before, but please could you just say a few words?
Okay, let me get the share screen. Just have a couple slides to show. So let me, I want to talk about safety engineering for today and the future and where we need to go. The problem really is that our core tools are all 50 to 65, 70 years old. Our technology is very different today. So if we look at a timeline here, Tamiya is back in the 1940s. Most all the other techniques used today are back in the 1960s. But all of a sudden in the late 70s, the world of engineering changed. We had the introduction of computers to control things, and now they're in everything. Exponential increases in complexity, sometimes allowed because of the use of the computers, new kinds of technology, changes in the human roles and systems. And these old techniques all assume that accidents are caused by component or human failures. But that's not what's happening. It's not the world of engineering today. And the only new thing is the stuff we've introduced. And I've always sort of wondered, why isn't anyone else coming up with totally new ideas? They're taking these old things and then trying to force new technology in them. But they're based on an assumption that's no longer true for the systems today. So the problem is that safety engineering is not progressing. It's living in the past. We're using old models of causations and tools, but engineering's changed drastically in the last 40 years. We're forcing software and these new kinds of factors, new problems into the old models, and that's just not going to work. The other thing we're doing is separating the analysis into isolated bits. So we have human factors, people doing human factors analysis. We have hardware people doing hardware. We have the software people looking at the software. Nobody's looking at the entire system, integrated system. We need new approaches that reflect the complexity of our system today, the types of accidents we're having, and treat the parts of the system as an integrated whole. So here's an example. Human factors tends to focus on the screen out. Hardware software engineering concentrates on the screen in. But the problems we're having today are in the integrated system as a whole. For things like mode confusion. Mode confusion, you have to look at the operator and the design of the software in the system in order to solve that problem. Situational awareness problems, inconsistent behavior. Most of the accidents today are caused by the integration of these things, not by the individual thing. So what's a way forward? Well, we need to start with new theoretical foundations. Accidents are no longer caused simply by component failure. I believe, and this is my belief, and that systems theory can provide a more powerful, inclusive scientific foundation that can include accidents involving all of these different things, including the social and management factors. You know, engineers ignore social issues, but the social scientists talk about doing socio-technical analysis, but then they only look at the social part. They don't look at the technical part in detail. So they're not really doing it either. They're just throwing this term around. We have to get things that will allow us and techniques that will allow us to look at all of these things integrated together, or we can't solve our problems. They also have to work on our very complex systems that are being designed today, as well as the advance of new technology like machine learning and AI that Chris talked about in the last session. All of these other things we're going to have to deal with, because that's the way people are building systems together. We're never going to get anywhere if we only try and enhance what has already always been done, because there has been a paradigm change going forward. And it's happened. And I think we need a paradigm change in our solution. Instead of looking at preventing failures for safety, which is what we always do, thus treating safety as a reliability problem, we should, I believe, look at enforcing constraints on system behavior and treating safety as a control problem. So that's my 5 minutes.
Thanks very much, Nancy. That's really interesting. I can see from the discussion there is a need for joined up thinking. My experience myself with the amount of accidents that occur out there and finding out the common causes when we can find them out, it does sort of illustrate what you're saying quite clearly to me, that there is that joined up thinking. I suppose there's a need, not revolution, as they say, more evolution with regards to new modeling. So thank you very much for that, Nancy. Professor Jonas Lukas, please, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yes, I'm Associate Professor at the Department of Civil Engineering in the Bonkritus University of Thrace. My position is on System Safety Engineering, and mainly my research is focused on extending the tools of the accident causation model that Professor Nancy introduced in 2004. So in short, I'm supporter of STAMP. I'm supporter of the ideas of Nancy Levinson. And in short, this is me and my team here. We are working on different aspects at improving the existing tools of STAMP. Now, what I think an issue that we need to discuss, if it is possible, is the role of legislation and to what extent safety is viewed from the practitioners as a bureaucratic and compliance approach. So based in my experience is that, there is a view from the practitioners that, okay, if I follow what the standards and the procedures and the law is saying, is stating, then I'm safe. So safety, applying safety and thinking based on safety has moved from an approach with scientific tools to an approach of filling forms. And this is completely misleading. And this is something that actually worries me, and I do not know how we can address this. This is an issue that I would like to bring to the table for discussion with the group here. It's something that really interests me, the complicated picture of the legislation and compliance that exists out there that turns safety into a bureaucratic process. So this is something that I would like to discuss with you.
Thank you very much, Jonas. Yeah, I truly know exactly what you're talking about with regards to the compliance issues. Sometimes it can be seen, obviously, as this is what's required. However, I see it working so much as a barrier in stopping moving things forward. I mean, I mentioned a little bit there with regards to setting goals. The goals, obviously, is a way of influencing and pushing people. And I think it's in the title, Sustainable Development Goals. It's not Sustainable Development Compliance. And I think, going forward, that is definitely in there. So thank you very much for that. Next, we have Evangelos Fikis. Sorry, I apologize for the pronunciation there, Evangelos.
No worries, no worries. Yeah, thank you, Darren. Evangelos Piknis, working for Cargill Company, approximately 24 years experience, all in all, in various industries, both in oil and gas, but also in food sector and projects, and happy to join, first of all, the forum today. What I would like to add to the earlier presenters, some challenges that I personally see within the business world, and how I would envision some changes that we see further supporting this sustainable approach in safety. And I will give examples that probably all of us have heard and have met so far. One of those being the company's scorecards. How often do we see safety results, health and safety results being publicized and being supporting the reputation and the image of the company? That is something that I'm really missing. I know that it is done out of the corporate sustainability reporting from the companies and the relevant indices that they're reporting to, but it is not common for health and safety. And I would like to see more in this respect. I would also like to see more representation within the boards from the top safety professionals, those people that really make quite good work within an enterprise environment, but we don't see them being represented within directors or executive boards. So it is a function that does not find easily its way at that top level. I would also like to see safety leadership in the way that the leaders are realizing what is good HSE. When they make the statement that good HSE is good business, they realize what this implies, and of course, how would they reach to a good HSE performance and a sustainable performance for their organizations. I would like to see HSE committees and unions that are educated and active in serving meaningful suggestions for the improvement in terms of health and safety, not just getting into claims and complaints and being reactive in things that happen within their own organization. And of course, while we're hearing a number of times about organizational changes for the sake of betterness in the efficiency and the effectiveness of organization, I haven't seen, or it's really rare to see organizations that change because of poor results in their safety performance and their safety indices. That's also something that it is rare to see across the board. And getting into the more HSE professional perspective and how the organizations are really dealing with control measures, I would like to see the measures and the controls shifting from the pure PPE approach to eliminating the risk approach, climbing up the ladder and getting into their table for discussion and assessment methods like elimination, substitution of risk, or engineering controls for coping with any risks that they face in their business activities. And I would like to see not only setting the rules, but enforcing the rules properly, educating people in order to follow the rules and comply with the rules. And of course, the safety leaders, meaning not only the safety professionals, but also the business leaders living by the rules and respecting people and responding to their organization employees' requests about safety. So that's something that really would give continuity in what's all in our profession. Individuals, we tend to say that yes, we look for the better in terms of safety. Constant learning and development of EHS professionals is critical. However, we would like to see authority levels to increase. We would like to see EHS professionals being at the point that they can influence or even being part of decision making when this affects safety. So that's more or less a couple of ideas. I know that all these issues raise quite some discussion. Each of them is a unique area of interest, but this is how I see the next day, if I can call it.
No, I think you can definitely call it. I think every topic that you've said there, I see that myself in every day that I go to work and all the projects that we invest in. It's such a challenge. And I do really appreciate the comments you made there with the scorecards. There's always a great reluctance to disclose health and safety information. And to get over that hurdle, my biggest concern is always when you see that zero when they do disclose anything. To me, that is an area of concern. I would rather see some figures there and see what they're actually doing about it to obviously make sure that they recognise it as an issue and they're trying to deal with it. So thank you very much for those answers. Now, my friend, Dr. Panopoulos, Georges, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Darren. If you allow me, I think Ellie has been already joined us. Should I then be the last one after Ellie, if you don't mind?
Yes,
Perhaps
certainly.
you don't see him. Yes.
Yeah, Eli Abu Jadid. I do apologise for the pronunciation. I am Welsh, and in my defence.
No worries. Thank you, Darren. Hello, gentlemen, and our professor lady. I've been into the EPC business for quite time, mainly into mega projects. I will not make, I will not make this introduction very, very long. Rather, I would like to tackle on what my colleagues have mentioned. Evangelos, I totally agree with you. I mean, this is the way that we've been striving to, and as Mr. Panopoulos is somehow aware, I've always been striving to utilize HSE performance indicators towards business development. And I agree with you. It is not very common to see somebody coming from an HSE background and interfacing within engineering, procurement, and construction contracts. While our experience in this, having somebody coming with this background and experience is a big added value towards business development, because in a way, not a single contractor, nor a developer, nor an authority, nor anybody that is willing to do any kind of investment would like to see death or serious injuries on their records. Utilizing the performance indicators registered through scorecards and classifications like the ENR magazines into business development has been contributing to much development of contractors, as well, and emphasizing on the idea of having records and published of records, even in bid and tendering management, based on HSE performance. You are either qualified to bid or not. So a lot of contractors are losing these opportunities for a simple investment or a process re-engineering in their organization, where they would invest more into HSE. This doesn't mean direct money, maybe empowerment of their staff that can take lead into HSE matters. Professor Yanni, I agree with you. The bureaucratic structure and strategy somehow puts burdens on contractors, and that's why the role and the importance of business solutions and tools to be incorporated within contractors and clients is very important. As a matter of fact, we utilize a lot of automated business tools and solutions that will allow to generate trends, to reflect our statistics, and to be correlated with and benchmarked with the industry standards. I think Mr. Panopoulos, maybe you would brief us a little bit on the packages that Management Force has, because I attended a demo, and it is very interesting tool that is being utilized that will serve the purpose and maybe reduce a little bit of bureaucratic and paperwork.
Thank you very much for that. Yes, that is exactly a very important point there with regards to the bureaucracy and paperwork. Far too many people obviously consider paper, and sometimes the procedures are so overwhelming. It's just too much to actually absorb and actually implement measures, and there is a need to use technology like these innovative software devices that we can use now more remotely to make sure safety is implemented. They're not just safety implemented, but they're the correct risks are identified. So finally, I just want to share the floor now with Dr. Georgios Thanopoulos. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Darren. Thank you all. I think what you described before is part of the issues that we have to deal with. Thank you, Nancy, very much for the opening, because this gives me the opportunity to approach the matter, well, the way you did, but a little bit differently, not that much. So 60 years ago or 50 years ago, we were about the basics. And I realized that back in 1999, when I started with this safety business, and I was struggling in find the way how to help my clients, but also how to help people, how to help my country. Because at that time, safety was not an issue. But it was not only in my country, in other countries as well. So we are back to basics, back in the basics of safety, reactive approach, not aligned between the industry or within the organization, very legislative approach, very technical things, very localized. So I noticed that in the same company, two different sites do different things. Two different project managers of the same company with very different approach. And then a couple of decades later, we started with safety first, put systems in place, talk about if safety pays, economics of safety. And we had in the economy and transformation from 4G to 5G. And now, what do we have? We talk about holistic approach of a complete system, a 360 degrees vision, behavioral-based safety, safety culture, soft skills, and sustainability. Well, safety is not anymore an engineer's job. It's not, well, what's the problem, what's the solution? It's more than that. And we need to shift our mindset towards what very well described Darren, you described Darren about a sustainable safety towards sustainable work. Because at the end of the day, what we're talking about, if our objective is not a happy world, a nice world, but a happy world should be a safe world for everyone, not those going to the work. Because let's say we are working for an engineering company. We went to the work safe, we work safely, we went back home safely. Fair enough. But what we design when we engineer out is not a safe playground. So it's not enough. So this is what I think we have to discuss, and we have to take into consideration what you described one way or another before, that there are areas or geographical areas or countries or companies that still struggling with implementation of personal protective equipment. Still, or they buy very cheap, is what I say sometimes to my client. Well, we have a problem with this safety shoes or this helmet and the masks. May I try one? I said, yes, you can try. Would you like to try yourself this one? I work all day with this. I wouldn't wear it. Why you ask your people? They produce money for you to wear it. So we've got this. And on the other hand, we're talking about a transformation of the economy into the green economy, about the transformation of the way that financing institution will finance projects. And it's not enough to say, oh, I've got a very good safety policy in place. I've got environmental policy. And it's not only policies and paper. It's, well, what have you done? Show me. And Ioannis, I will take up the glove. We don't need legislation, since we have this very powerful tool, risk assessment. All we need is an enforcing authority, well-trained, with no influences from anywhere and no relations with anywhere. Well, do it the way you want. You want systems, make systems. You want to communicate those things, okay. I want to see the your risk assessment and we can discuss on that. And that would be more than enough. So I stop sharing. Thank you, Darren. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Georges. That's really interesting too. I mean, you touched on a number of points there that I fully support with regards to risk assessment. I know we've shared many a conversation with regards to the challenges in our countries of operation. So thank you very much for that comment. One thing as well that we've all got to battle with now. I mean, although we're still obviously, as we are here today with regards to the pandemic, I think one of the biggest concerns I've got is how this is going to affect safety going forward. I think the competing priorities with regards to other topics was also quite challenging before the pandemic. I think now it's even going to be even tougher. So thank you very much for that. On that note, I'd like to open the discussion up and any questions from our audience.
I have just one comment, is that we've been mixing two things up in these sessions, and I think we need to be clear that they are different. One is workplace safety, occupational safety, versus system safety, which is engineered system safety. And they're done very differently, and they have been for a long time. They used to be done the same until about 70 years ago, when they diverged and went totally different ways. So the approaches that people have used are very different. I believe that we should be able to integrate them and use, I think system safety has gone way beyond workplace safety. And I think that a lot of those ideas could be applied to workplace safety and bring it up to a higher level of science and engineering of the workplace.
Thank you, Nancy. Yeah, I fully agree. One of the past experiences I've had when I've engaged with a number of rail clients, for instance, is that operational safety and their safety systems are quite separate from their occupational health and safety. So it's something I know that they're two separate entities, although they may overlap in some respects. There is a need to ensure, obviously, the highest levels, looking at those particular areas in isolation.
Interesting though, because if we want to train, I'm talking now as a person who is training new engineers, new people to enter the market. It is very interesting to understand these concepts, that there are different approaches to safety, and it is very challenging on how to integrate them if it is possible. I mean, the system safety engineering approach and the occupational safety methods and tools. Since we're talking for socio-technical systems, there is a challenge on how to merge these ideas in one holistic safety system, let's say, or a safety model, let's say. And this is very challenging. There are behavioral approaches for people. There are system engineering approaches for engineering system and automated controllers. I mean, is this possible? And can we do that? For instance, Nancy, you have integrated, you have experience, I think, in both worlds. And the other speakers, do you see a future where these two worlds can be somehow find a common ground, and are we able to produce something new, which you, Nancy, proposed? We need something new that integrates actually good ideas from both disciplines within safety science.
You know, engineering is changing and workplace is changing so quickly that they have to be combined, because we're automating the workplaces, but there's still humans in them. And so with all these robots and other things that I've been working on, you have to integrate workplace safety ideas with the engineering safety ideas in order for them to be applicable to the problems that we have today.
It's interesting how automation is infiltrating into the working environment. For instance, robots, robots taking places in factories, automated cars and lorries, and also, unmanned aerial vehicles that take the jobs of people. We are living to very interesting times, and I think safety now needs to address these issues. And as we discussed in the previous session, I think the complexity is increasing. So I wonder how record keeping in this type of complexity, where we need to record every state of the system that is getting extremely enormous, how this can be done, or if it is possible to be done. Anyway, that's some thoughts, thinking out loud now.
Darren, would you allow me to provocate a little bit the panel, or what is the issue raised by Ioannis?
Oh, by all means, Georgios, carry on. I know you would probably enjoy the opportunity.
Well, let's think of a scenario that EBRD is being asked to finance a project as a new plan, purely automated, so an unmanned operation. So safety is perfect, except for the plan itself, if something will go wrong. On the other hand, we have another plan which is semi-automated with 300 people to work, but not confirm that safety can be at that high level and ensure safety to, let's say, 99.99% for the employees. Would that be a challenge if to finance one of the projects, what to choose?
It is always difficult to make a decision on what project to finance and to choose. It depends on the context. It depends on many aspects of things.
I suppose, even though I'm a moderator and supposed to stay objective, maybe I can obviously offer some thoughts on this particular topic, which I think you were looking for in your Georgios.
If I may interfere, Darren, just for 2 words. Mr. Panopoulos, maybe I will go with the one with the people inside, because if we are talking about the notion of HSE is a tool that would lead us to sustainability, utilizing fully robots will eliminate the social aspect, which is opportunities for people to work and income, despite the fact that it will boost the economy in terms of production rates, preserve the environment, preserve the safety. However, we will diminish the social pillar of sustainability and sustainable development.
Yeah, that's exactly where that was going to come from. There's a balance here, and I think I mentioned to you before with regards to competing priorities and achieving that balance. And it is a very delicate balance. And as I just shared there with us, with regards to, if we have no people there, there is no salaries going back into the economy, which will then make people's lives better. There are 17 sustainable development goals. So of course, to achieve sustainability, it's a very complex topic, and I think this is the really important thing. Each, in a case like that, needs to be looked at in isolation. Every project is slightly different. We can't take a complete blanket view on any particular investment. That's why we carry out these assessments. We have these safeguards in place to assess, and that obviously is part of our banks, the World Bank, the European Investment Bank role. It's a very interesting discussion to have sometimes, and there are obviously objections with certain other individuals. However, we do need to look at that in a holistic view.
Darren, if I am also allowed to say that concerning the example of the fully automated unit, I would say that behind the design and engineering of this unit, there should have been human beings. So the error potential is still there, depending on how much time was spent on the engineering and design activities, and reviewing and verifying and validating. So we cannot tell that this is the optimum solution because we eliminate people. People would have been definitely in the earliest stage of the conceptual part and planning of the automated production or manufacturing unit, whatever was the example. So I believe that, yeah, human being and human intervention is still there, even in the planning stage. So we cannot just oversee that.
Yeah, that's correct. And we need to consider not just obviously in the planning and the design stage, but also the supply chains with regards to the materials that might be serviced in that particular plant. So it is a very complex situation that we need to look at, and it is quite difficult. I mean, from a bank's point of view, we put together and try and mitigate the risks as best as we can. I don't actually make the decisions. I leave that to management as well above my pay grade. But you know, for us as professionals, we're there to try and identify the issues and bring it to the attention so others can make those decisions. Well, I think we're almost coming to a close now. I know obviously we only have 45 minutes. It's an interesting discussion we're having, so I'm not sure if anyone has any final comments to make before we wrap up the talk.
I grabbed the opportunity, Darren, based on what you mentioned before, that financing can be proved a very good tool to boost countries or economies or companies to improve safety significantly into a sustainable approach. And I know that the BRD is doing that for quite a few years, at least the years we work for EBRD. So yes, I believe that's a key issue to help areas that still they're struggling with the very basics of health and safety. It will help a lot, I believe.
I fully agree, Georges. I think the development banks, not just EBRD, across all the continents that operate, they are obviously in a very good position to influence safety. And I think we're moving in that direction. As you can see, the environmental and safety, environmental and social safeguards that are now introduced have come such a long way. And they've been developed, you know, because of obviously the lessons that we've learned. And sometimes we do get challenged quite a lot with regards to our safeguards being too strong. You know, and it's very difficult for us to argue that task. And we have to obviously share information about the painful stories we've found out. Without having these in place, this is what could potentially happen. Now, the other thing, as Georges, you mentioned there with regards to green financing, this is getting even more. I know our bank personally is obviously moving in this direction, and we will see this a lot more. The days of obviously any bank like EBRD supporting oil and gas or mining projects like that is disappearing, and new innovative methods are coming out, whether it's renewable energy, and these are new technologies. And I take on board what Nancy just said there with regards to technology moving so quickly. And that, I think, is probably one of my biggest concerns, is that the speed of technology moving forward is moving too fast for maybe safety. And I think there's a lot more that we can learn. Although obviously it may be environmentally friendly, the new technology, it's not always safer.
Then perhaps if you see the the question of Roland you would like to answer is in the chat. It's interesting. Well, not much different from what we have already discussed, but if you go to chat, would you want me to read it quickly?
What is an IFI?
International Financing Institution.
Oh,
Darren, would you want me to read because I've got it in front of me somewhere in the chat? You are mute, Darren. Darren, you are mute.
Yes, maybe if you can help, but you can read it towards us.
So what are the most challenges international financing institutions are facing in the implementation of their policies and guidelines in various developing countries, and particularly not European ones, if you like?
Yeah, it can vary. I mean, we find that sometimes capacity is very low in a lot of these countries, and also the ability to access maybe more modern technologies or equipment to help them just isn't available in some of these countries. I mean, I'm going back to the likes of using bamboo for scaffolding. At what point do you say you can't use it? But what if there is nothing else available? So you could question, well, is that the only thing we can use? I mean, so it's quite a challenge. So I would say probably the geographical areas that we work can be quite challenging. However, I do find sometimes personally that the law, that the legal requirements in the countries are probably one of the biggest challenges. Because if I had €1 for every time someone turned around to me and said, well, I meet the legal requirements and that's all they think they need to do, they don't need to do any more. Unfortunately, I would be a very rich man and probably wouldn't be here today. But it's trying to get through to the mindset, and it's normally the senior managers to go past that compliance. And I think it's probably the countries that EBRD operates is very sort of compliance driven. It's very focused around prescriptive laws and requirements. And there's just this need really to move forward with, trying to reach further. When they can do more, they should be doing more. And I think that's the biggest challenge, getting into the mindset of the senior managers now, not the workers, the senior managers to do more.
May I rephrase this question for Evangelos? Because Cargill is a multinational company. And in fact, like IFIs have their very high level and policies and standards. So mother company in the States has these very high standards for safety. What's the challenge to implement the same standards in areas where, for instance, the domestic gross domestic product is very low and capital per person is very low?
Yeah, George, thank you. I would say that the challenges are there. We are managing the challenges. We cannot eliminate challenges in this perspective. We are operating also in countries in Africa with substantial business there, and we know that the legislation is not to our favor. However, the networking that our company has and the support from the regional organization facilitates whatever the challenges are faced there. And I would say that in this respect, it is done a very good job. However, yes, there will be and there will continue to be challenges, and any such adverse conditions, be it the lack of legislation, be it the low maturity of the market, will be really giving us hard time. However, the organization itself is determined to proceed in the lines and within the values that has chosen so far. So it's not in the sense of making compromises or making discounts, but in the sense of enforcing and encouraging and supporting the local teams wherever we operate in order to stand for these difficulties that we have mentioned. So yeah, we're not there yet. We know that the problem still applies. However, the organization itself is in the position, let's say, to make it happen by the use of proper resources. So that's the continuous effort which is placed always in such geographies where the maturity of the market is not helping us as we would do in an easier way in a more developed countries.
Probably add to that as well, Evangelos, with regards to the corporate standards of international organisations such as Gargis. I mean, it's great that you can have a corporate standard and apply that to various different countries. So, and they have the ability then to push and drive them past, obviously, compliance with legal requirements. The biggest challenge I think we have is not so much on the sort of group standards or organisations which are operating internationally. It's those organisations that don't have that experience or knowledge of international operating. For instance, if you pick a small organisation that maybe has never worked outside Tajikistan, for instance, they only know Tajikistan, and that sometimes is such a barrier. And we then have to come in and obviously try and explain to them, this is where international is, and this is where you are. It's quite a challenge.
And I think, Darren, just grasping the opportunity, it was mentioned somehow in earlier discussions that without business, we don't see safety. So with minimal business in certain geographies, we have to do our utmost in order to deliver what we aspire to have. And obviously, it will be done proportionally to the circumstances and to the conditions, always bearing in mind that we would like to keep high risk to the lowest possible level after our controls. But yeah, we assess each situation per case, and we don't just promote global standards to environments which we know by default they will not respond in the same manner as in other developed countries.
Okay, well, unless anyone's got any final comments, Georges, I don't know if you want to wrap up the final session, but I'd just like to say thanks very much for your involvement here today, and Georges, I'll leave it with you to close the session.
Thank you, Darren. Thank you all. Thank you, Nancy, because you were with us from Seattle, and we know that it's very early in the morning when you started with the session before. Thank you all. I would like particularly to thank my team in Management Force, also the University of Thrace, the Association of Safety in Cyprus, and the Association of Safety Practitioners in Greece, that they work with us to support and organize the event. Thank you. I would like to thank all the attendees, but also I would like to thank warmly ERA, who has made this event possible using the best technology available and having all their technicians in place and manage all the problems that appeared very quick. Thank you all. Let's say that, let's hope that our next meeting will be hybrid, so we can see us in person, or most of us, but keeping also on the air, a virtual one, to give opportunity to more and more people to be with us, to share experiences and learn from each other. It's a common task. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for
Bye,
managing
Nancy.
yours.
Bye, the rest of the
Bye,
group.
everyone.
Bye now.
Ciao, bye bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.